Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All of our guests today, including Thomas Drance, standing by, are sponsored by Passant Motors. The Passant Motors Scholarship is back again this year. Passant is offering $32,000 to 16 deserving students. Get all the details at passantmotors.com/scholarship. Deadline to enter is September 24th. David Cedar, Delaney's OK Tire, and Langley Inbox. Philip Hronik should sign his next contract at Rogers Arena in his Gaunch. So we're having a lot of people wondering, is it Gaunch or Ginch?
In the 80s, I remember using Ginch more than Gaunch. And I remember the Gaunchy poll. But that's what that's what it was.
I don't know how that started either. Like, where did Gaunch or Ginch come from?
I don't know.
For underwear.
I don't know.
Can you look that up and get back to me on that?
Can you Google Ginch and Gaunch, Ryan?
I think that's illegal. Joining us to talk about not Gaunch and Ginch, but the Canucks, Thomas Drance from the Athletic and Sportsnet 650. Thomas, hope your summer was a good one. How are you?
Well, welcome back to me, huh?
Yeah.
Well, say, so long. I'm happy to discuss, what is it, Gaunch or Ginch?
Yeah.
Just so long as you don't ask me to discuss Gooch, I think we're good to go.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'll write that down. How was your summer?
Oh, it's great. Very relaxed. Yeah, it was awesome. And, I'm not one of those guys, though, who thinks it's too short. By the time you get to football season, back to school, I've always felt the official start of the New Year's is September 1. Mm-hmm. I'm raring to get back. I'm looking forward to getting back into the rink. And next Friday when we talk, I'll already be up in the Okanagan covering hockey. So let's go. Let's get started. It is good to be back with you, gentlemen. Thank you for having me again.
Who's the Canucks' next captain? Elliot Friedman says it's going to be Quinn Hughes. Same with Rick. Who's going to be the Canucks' next captain? Who should be the next captain?
Yeah, I think the signs are all pointing to Quinn Hughes. It's not like the club hasn't been telegraphing this for, a long time, in my view. Even Rick Tockett's commentary about Quinn Hughes' leadership sort of down the stretch, I thought was pretty revealing. I think that Hughes's growth in terms of some of what we can see, right? Because there's a lot that a captain does that we can't see that happens behind the scenes. But in terms of what we can see, in terms of the way he carries himself, in terms of his handling of the media, in terms of the leadership that he showed, especially around the Pride Night controversy and some other sort of tentpole items that cropped up over the course of the season, I think he's a very strong pick and probably the right pick. The one thing that I'd sort of look at and wonder about a little bit, gentlemen, is, with the Pettersson dynamic that will obviously hang over this club over the duration of the season, I do sort of think, we've gone through this stage with Pettersson where, despite the fact that he's the best two-way center on this team, the team has, across multiple coaches, been pretty reluctant to use him in toughs. They've been pretty reluctant to make him the man in terms of how they've handled his deployment, in terms of bridging him instead of going long-term, even in terms of the club's public commentary under new management. You had Jim Rutherford call Thatcher Demko in his introductory press conference a franchise goalie. Quinn Hughes, one of the best defensemen in the league, and the endorsement of Pettersson was far more tepid. A few months later, you had the Patrick Alvin comment to Patrick Johnston at the Province, later clarified about how the club didn't really have any superstar players. And now you're sort of going to go in and make someone else captain. At some point, especially if you're trying to appeal to a star level player, don't you have to invest in that guy in terms of making it his team, in terms of showing that love, that confidence, that sort of stuff in the margins that we all know matters and that can challenge perhaps a more introverted superstar to sort of take on more responsibility in terms of how they interact with their teammates. Personality-wise, I think Quinn Hughes is a great fit, but I do sort of wonder if the timing is right, given all that's happening around the team at the moment.
Thomas, we haven't talked to you about Pettersson, the contract situation. He came out and said that, I'm going to wait a while. I'm not going to sign right now. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not ideal, right? I think it does. And look, this isn't uncommon. I mean, I don't know if you guys follow the NBA, but like Giannis Antetokounmpo in Milwaukee sort of had similar commentary about signing an extension, and it puts a lot of pressure on a team, I think, to get it right. In Giannis's case, it's to win a championship or to surround him with championship caliber pieces. I think in the Canucks case, I do think there should be. And I actually think this is a far more important thing than, the evergreen question of can they make the playoffs after an offseason of upgrades? Like the most important thing, I think, is that the Canucks need to have a quiet, drama-free, hockey-focused season from nose to tail, right from the get-go. You think about last year, and it's honestly mind-boggling. Like, remember they couldn't win in the preseason, and it became a thing, and their performances were bad, and like Boudreau was blasting them off of preseason performance. They blew multiple sort of multi-goal leads in the first 5 games. They had a players-only meeting by game 3. Fans booed them off the ice by the home opener. And that's not even getting into all the off-ice stuff, right? A player injury that was mismanaged to the point that a teammate called it out publicly. Multiple court filings against senior members of hockey operations leadership, a human rights complaint filing anyway, in addition to what we learned in family court, allegations against the owner. I mean, it was just constant. That Boudreau trading the captain, and it's been years of this. Like, this is a team that's had 3 head coaches in 2 years, boys. This is a team that's had 3 general managers, if you want to count Stan Smeal's 2-game stint, in 2 years. I mean, a stable season with some continuity and some normalcy. Like, that's what I want to see from the Canucks. That's where my expectations are going into the season. And I think the pressure should be pretty high on the organization to provide that environment to its players anyway, but especially given the dynamic that will ultimately shape a lot of the season and color our perception of it, that's created by Elias Pettersson deciding to wait and see.
Yep. Okay, cap compliant. Now, after they signed Pia Suter, they're in a bit of a bind here. How are they going to get cap compliant? We know Tucker Pullman's in trouble with his injury, LTIR. Tanner Pearson, how are you getting Tanner Pearson on the on the roster? How are they going to be cap compliant, Thomas, on game 1?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a ton of levers to pull. And one thing about projecting the cap this far out from when it matters, because realistically, right, the cap doesn't come into play until the team has to set their opening day roster, and that comes right after Canadian Thanksgiving. So we're a month out, and a lot can change. And I don't just mean trades, right? It is extremely rare to get through a month of NHL training camp and practices and preseason games without injury. Like, it is very rare to get to the start of the season and have no one additionally hurt, with the cap ramifications that come through that, whether it's additional roster spots because they're on IR, or potentially the ability to exceed the upper limit of the salary cap by even more should they go on LTI. So I want to note this before I get into it, which is that this is a bit of a fool's errand, simply because we'll have to wait and see. And we know, whether it's Tanner Pearson's status and things look to be progressing well based on his presence at captain's skates, which is great to see. But we also know that, Ilya Mikheyev seems more hopeful for game 1, right, than he does assured. That's 4.75. Well, if Mikheyev opens the season on LTI, I mean, that's problem solved. That's easy, right? But even if everyone were to stay healthy for the next 5 weeks and they were to go into the season with no additional long-term injuries and no additional LTI relief besides Tucker Pullman, the Canucks still will be able to be compliant without having to make a trade or rely on losing a guy on waivers or any of that other sort of, transactional mechanisms that involve the participation of another team. Just with the way they're positioned, they have a very straightforward path to compliance. And what it'll require is them to waive, right, or reassign one guy who has a real veteran salary above. It's roughly 1.02 million based on my sort of projections off of capfriendly.com, but I'm sure it's a little bit higher or a little bit lower than that, because obviously the cap is a difficult thing to get precisely right without looking at the team's specific spreadsheets, and I don't think they'd let me do that. So they have a pretty direct path. You waive one guy over 1.02 million, which I think does put some competitive pressure on, some veteran guys, some players at training camp, maybe Pearson himself, certainly Niels Höglander would be another name that sticks out to me, to come in and, be fit and look good and work hard and be consistent at it over the course of the next 5 weeks, or 4 weeks anyway. And, if they reassign one guy over, that sort of roughly 1.15 threshold, they'll be able to be cap compliant with a 22-man roster, even if Mikheyev and Pearson are both off of LTI. So I don't look at the dynamic, the cap dynamic facing the Canucks since the Pius Suter signing is sort of necessitating anything super dramatic, aside from perhaps one more expensive camp cut. And that's definitely a storyline to monitor. It's going to be a competitive camp, especially at the bottom end of the roster. There's no doubt about that, boys.
We're going to be joining you on Wednesdays, aren't we?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited.
On 650?
Yeah. Well, and I should plug that, I suppose. Canucks Talk comes back on Sportsnet 6:50 noon on Monday. I took a week off beyond what you guys did, which makes me feel a little bit lazy. Makes me feel like I'm not working as hard as Rick.
No surprise there. No surprise.
Oh yeah, no surprise. I can't have that. But no, I am thrilled to have you gentlemen joining us on Wednesdays. It's going to be a ton of fun. Anytime that I can add venues to Blasterick Dollywall, I'm a happy man.
Oh. Don't worry.
I get to do it every day.
Oh, that all your stupid Kuzmenko takes last year, Thomas. I'm going to hold you accountable this year to those.
All right.
Wednesdays on 650.
I'm 0% concerned about my take that his value might have peaked last year.
No. You were so wrong on Kuzmenko last year on 1 million fronts. We'll talk later.
Okay. Thanks, Thomas. See you on Wednesday.
I hope you're right, Rick. I hope you're right. But betting against me in this market hasn't gone well for a lot of folks.
Oh, good. I like that.
Good luck. Good luck to you, Rick. Good luck.
Who loves you, buddy? Who loves you?
Likewise. Cheers, boys.
Thomas Drance, you can read him in The Athletic and hear him on Sportsnet 650.